Hi everyone, this is Alan McKay. Welcome to episode 124. I'm speaking with Michael Wortmann, a visual effects supervisor on a lot of feature films like Black Panther and Atomic Blonde and many more. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Okay, so welcome to a brand new episode. I'm really excited about this one. I get to speak with Michael Wortmann about his entire career working on a lot of really amazing feature films, as well as his journey from being an artist on the box, transitioning to VFX Suping, and talking about a lot of his experience on set, as well as just in general, like hiring purposes and a lot of things that we get into. We definitely talk a lot about some of the projects he's worked on, like Atomic Blonde and a few other ones. We get into a lot of really great stuff. At the same time, me personally, this week, I'm really excited because we just opened up the live action series for everyone who registered over Christmas period. So it's really cool that we finally get to dive into that. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. At the same time, there's a lot of public things that I want to organize pretty soon. For anyone not aware, I'm speaking at the IA Masterclass in Paris in March. I'll try to include show notes on that, just links to where you can register, things like that. So if you are in Europe, come along, because what I really love about this event is the access to the speakers. In fact, if I wasn't a speaker, if that was something that I wanted to do, is to build a network, this would be the place to do it, because every single year I get to interact with everyone. We have all these other amazing people. Like last year was Neil Blevins, Ash Thorpe, Dan Rorty, Ryan Church, and like all these other great speakers. The year before that was like Craig Mullins. This year is going to be phenomenal. And I love it because each year also with my mentorship, we do a meetup, and that's really cool. So this year, I'm going to try and organize it before the event, so before all the craziness begins. But basically, I want to spend a couple hours just hanging out with everyone in the mentorship who's attending or who's in Europe and can come along and just have drinks, chat, and just basically have a bit of time to hang out and all get to know each other. And I love that every year that we've been doing that, and some people have been attending since the very beginning. So I try and do that twice a year, once in LA, once in Paris. Just kind of hang out with everyone, chat, and just talk about the industry and give advice, do whatever we can. It's a lot of fun. So that's one thing that's coming up. There's a bunch of other stuff. I'm about to head down to San Diego for 10 days. I got to attend a couple of conferences down there. And at the same time, it's going to be fun because it means I'm going to be locked in a hotel room for a couple of days, which will give me a chance to do some planning. One of the big things that I have coming up is that I'm going to be putting together a course around branding. And this is something that I've been wanting to do for years. And this is actually the first time I've actually publicly mentioned it. But basically, I'm going to be working on a course on building your brand. And it goes beyond just the basics. It's really more about how to build a name, how to build a niche in your industry. So that way you can stand out from all the noise. You can stand out as an artist. And this is something that I'm also going to be speaking on in Paris as well. And I also want to do a boot camp around, or at least on some of the subjects. So there's a lot branding wise that I really just want to kind of dive deep into. So I'm kind of looking forward to having a few days where I can just lock myself in a room and hide. I'm basically going to a conference down in San Diego, and then there's a couple of days where Social Media Marketing World conference is on that I'm not attending, but a lot of the speakers at that event I'll be hanging out with at nighttime. So during the day, I'll be essentially just doing a bit of my own homework, just working on a lot of stuff that I want to do. And then at nighttime, I'm going to be hanging out with a lot of the speakers at Social Media Marketing World. And then after that, I've got a intensive that I'm meeting up with the same speakers, actually, but then a few additional people who are going to be down there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's just weird scheduling that I'm down there for a few days. Then I got to be back there a couple of days later. So I'm just going to stay down there for 10 days and do my thing. But, I kind of like that seclusion sometimes. Like, I call it plane brain when you're doing a flight and you end up needing to, do a lot of work. You get so much done, or even just planning, thinking, reflecting while you're on a plane. And same deal when you're in a hotel. That's a little bit more distracting, but I find that just getting that seclusion from the rest of the world, being in solitary, it can be a really productive period. So I'm looking forward to that. There's also a few other things that I want to try and cram in down there, but we'll see how things go. So there's lots of stuff coming up. I'm really excited. 2018 is going to be an overwhelming year for me, but it's definitely going to be a fun one. There's so much I want to do with the boot camps, the podcast, new website, lots of things coming up, lots of new training, talks, everything. So check it out. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to the It's Art Masterclass or IA Masterclass. And at the same time, if you want to check out the show notes, simply go to alanmckay.com/124 for episode 124. And you better check out the show notes, look at all the quotes and all the key takeaways from this episode. So there's a lot of really good stuff in there. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. Let's dive in.
Hi, my name is Michael Wortmann. I'm a visual effects supervisor. I'm from Germany, and I started my career also in Germany. I studied at the Filmakademie in Ludwigsburg, which has a special course for studying animation and visual effects.
As I mentioned before, like if we want to kind of dive all the way back, I mean, when you, I guess, were growing up, did you always picture you'd want to get into film, or did it kind of naturally happen over time?
No, that was really my dream job, and I'm one of the many people that was inspired by Jurassic Park, and back then I just went to the local library and found this amazing book, which was really great because I've never seen a making of book before, and it was giving me some ideas about how effects work. Those were pretty much all special effects, so it didn't cover visual effects and computer animation a lot, but it just raised the idea that this thing is out there. So then the next step would be to find out how this works.
That's cool. And do you remember what that book was?
It was a making of book about Jurassic Park, but it was quite comprehensive. It covered all the Stan Winston stuff and the Michelangelo creatures and puppets that have been built. But it also covered the first steps that ILM was doing with that crazy dinosaur input device robot thing where they captured the motions and all that.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I just interviewed Ben Snow, who did Jurassic Park 2. But yeah, just kind of like going through that. I mean, for me, that was definitely always a really inspirational movie too. I think that you got two generations. You got the Star Wars generation who got inspired, and then you got everyone else who's like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So you watched Jurassic Park, you kind of were like, how the hell did they do that? And that kind of sent you on a path of obsession, wanting to learn all this stuff.
Yeah, and then back then there was not really a lot of sources. Also, internet wasn't that much around, so it was not that easy to get some information. So I got my hands on a copy of 3D Studio Max and just tried to play around with it, and just kept doing that for at least 2 or 3 years. And then at the time when school was finished, it was the idea was, okay, I need to get in. And back then, because there was hardly any education available, internships were the next logical step to do. So I applied at different companies. I also remember my parents throwing in an application at Weta, which existed back then because they were already working on the first Lord of the Rings movies, because they went for travel to New Zealand. So they actually planted my application at Weta in person, which is quite cool, I thought. And when I eventually down the road worked there, I even did find my application in the database.
That's so cool.
like 12 years later or something.
That's awesome. That's so cool. No, that's great. And yeah, like a lot of people that speak to whose careers like started in Germany, it definitely seems like the internship is how a lot of people go. Like for you, did you find that pretty effective, like going in and interning for a studio?
Yeah, I mean, I just was an intern for, I think, 3 months. And then I was already hired, because back then there were not many people around. And if you showed some talent and the right work attitude, I guess then people would just grab you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
It was very easy to get into a full position back then with pretty much no work experience, because they just had no one to operate anything at all. So my internship ended after 3 months, and then I was already junior animator or whatever, and took it from there. But that was basically my entry into my career. And I think I spent 1 month during my studies as an intern at Framestore, which was a different thing because it was all this big internship scheme and all that. But just to really entry, that was it. When I compare that to the interns that I have around myself nowadays, it's much harder for them to get in there because there's much more competition. There's also much more demands and everything, but it is different. It's not as straightforward as it used to be back then.
I think it's great. And like, I think it's also like a pretty valuable thing to mention too, is that I think that a lot of people, when they do go and intern, you got some people actually apply themselves and have a long game in place, whereas some people just kind of go like, hey, this will be fun, and just kind of show up. And I've seen that where we'll hire like a render wrangler, or someone comes in to intern or whatever it is, and there's maybe a small percentage who actually go in and try to make an impression and work hard, and then there's a lot of other people who just kind of think, hey, this will be fun. And for me, it's always frustrating, because it's like, this is your chance to actually, impress people. You got FaceTime with all these important people, and it's a chance to actually make the most of it. And you get some people who just completely blow that opportunity because they just goof off and don't really think about it as a serious thing, especially coming from high school, where I guess they're not really thinking about like, hey, maybe this could lead to a job, or hey, this is a chance for me to learn. It's more like, oh, this would be cool. I just get to hang out and not take this too seriously.
Yeah, that's true. It's a bit different, for example, in Germany, because there are some studies that require the students to go and take an internship. Mm-hmm. And it also comes down to what they get paid, because if you by law in Germany, you have to be paid as an intern if you just do an internship. If it's a compulsory internship during your studies, you don't have to be paid. So there's like always this danger of exploiting people. So, but I've never seen people working really for free. So all the interns get paid, so at least they can afford a minimum of survival. And in Germany, the deal was always, okay, you're an intern here, you don't get paid much, but you get first hands-on experience on projects. So whoever came in got a workstation and could work on shots. And eventually, even after an internship, leave the company and already have some really cool shots on their reel. Whereas compared to the runner scheme that is operated in London is very different, because they have to deal with the cutlery and the dirty dishes for half a year before they will even see a computer. Dressed in a fancy NPC T-shirt, running through Soho, getting sandwiches for their boss. So it's more like their alternative way of education, because it's pretty much for the people, or that was at least my impression, that cannot afford to go to a fancy university that costs thousands of pounds, dollars, whatever. But they can get in there by working their way up. And I've seen a lot of careers that were based on being a runner in the first place, but it's different because they will have to invest a couple of years until they get their hands on a shot. Whereas the interns we have here, it's much more straight to find out if they got talent and if they have the attitude. You will pretty much know after half a year. And I have a lot of people here that have been interns, and we promoted them up and hired them after their studies. And it's always been great, because you would already know what you're getting.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And you're right. Like every, London-based producer, for instance, I've worked with, they've always got the nightmare stories of 5 or 6 years of literally, I'll say, eating shit, because you're being a runner at 5 a.m, or just doing the bottom of the barrel stuff. And it's very similar to, like, let's say in LA, you would work in the mailroom and work your way up. And VFX is very different in that regard, I think, these days. But yeah, it's essentially you pay your dues, and then you kind of earn your way into certain roles. And I think these days in a lot of industries, especially with the internet, it's more about, you make a good reel, you get on LinkedIn and make some good connections, and it's more about being proactive in relationship building and finding the right people to kind of get in front of, rather than needing to kind of just bide your time, I guess, till the right opportunity comes up. And, for you, I guess, like looking at how it is now and how it is back then, like, do you think it's a lot easier to get work these days? Obviously, there's a lot more competition, but there's also a lot more opportunities too.
There is a lot of demand. The bigger problem, or the entry barrier, is just a little bit higher these days. Not because of the lack of jobs. There's enough jobs and enough need. But for example, I'm never going for interns that have barely no experience. I need someone who is towards the end of their studies, who has already like toyed a little bit around at home, and that is getting more focused onto the tasks that will be there in production. Because what a lot of students did was they would during their studies do whatever they like. They don't face very strict regulations on what to achieve and where to get. That really depends on where you go for your studies. But still, it's not the same like you have to deliver on your deadline. Mm-hmm. That thing will be new. So that is what you have to train people to. You cannot spend an infinite time on playing things. You need to get stuff done. Or the other way around. After 2 years working on a diploma movie, there's nothing else possible than making it awesome because you spent 2 years on it. So we are looking for people that we don't have to train up really from the ground, that have no knowledge. There needs to be either it be more like an IT background or a creative background, whatever it is, but there needs to be some substance that it can work with. We cannot start training interns from nothing because they're interested in the industry or something. That doesn't work. For example, we have a lot of times people that come in which are not graduated from school but more like from 10th grade or something, so they just want to know what the job is about. They're not about starting a career. For them it's just hanging around and watching. They can't do anything. So unless you can't take the smallest step on your own, it's not worth really diving into it.
That's cool. And I guess that's a good point to bring up. Like, what do you think is a really good skill to have to really stand out? Like, let's say you have a lot of artists who are all coming in, who are talented, they understand the software. Is there any single skills that you think are going to make you have a bit of an upper hand over everyone else, especially starting out?
Well, it really depends on the kind of company you're trying to get into. For example, here at Trickster, where I'm working now, we are we're a bigger company, so we have specialists. There, we don't run a big generalist team or something. If you go to some commercial company or a boutique studio with a small amount of people or any other content creating agency, whatever it is, or live media, you name it, where generalists are working, then you can have people that don't know yet where the way will lead them, and it's fine. If I am going for someone, it is good if they know what they want to be. Like, if someone says, I want to be a compositor, okay, that's fine. You might not be a compositor yet, but you have a clear goal where you want to go for. So it's the goals that really set the interest for me. Because if there's someone, I like modeling, also like compositing, lighting is great too, and I've looked into effects partially, but maybe I want to be an editor. Or we had an intern who actually wanted to become a DOP, but he just told us like half a year after he started the internship, which was a bit crazy. He spent half a year and he wanted to become a DOP finally, and I was like, okay, well then,
very different direction.
Probably not the right thing for you. Yeah. So
cool.
If the clear goal is definitely something. If you go into the bigger company, because you need to focus on something, there isn't not many generalists around here.
That's great. I think you're absolutely right. If you have a goal, then you have a direction. And I think that the biggest problem a lot of people have is that, you're right. They either don't know what they want to do, or they want to do everything, because, again, it's more they want to dabble at that point. But if you have that end goal in place, then it means that you can start to head in that direction and start to build a game plan around that. So that's really cool. And for you, I mean, when you first started out, you started out as a technical director. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I was a junior animator for a little time, but I looked at effects quite straight away from the beginning. Anything with particles was amazing me, and then finding out what other techniques are around. Mm-hmm. So that's what I looked into and did my first steps. So what in my case, the special thing was I already had my first I already worked for 2.5 years in the industry and then went back to studying. Mm-hmm. Which was a bit unique compared to my classmates who didn't really work before. They all came to the film university blank. They had done stuff at home, but they didn't have like a 2 or 3 year work experience like me. So I was kind of a bit spoiled for studies because I was already trained to the idea of delivering for a given task rather than just experimenting and toying around like they did during the study. So I kept working during my studies all the way through and just spent half of the time at university. And besides, I was a freelancer already working and still kept working on movies. So I didn't really drop out for all that time. So when I graduated, I already was looking back at 7 years of professional experience, which is not common if you just drop out of university.
Yeah.
But then that was the time when I was starting to look beyond the plate, as we say here, which was then going abroad, which was the next logical step. A lot of people had already started going to London, which was pretty close to Germany and wasn't like a big hurdle to get there. And it worked great because back then that was the Harry Potter days. There were tons of jobs there. Anybody would go to London. And back then salaries were the same like they were today. So it was quite good money and the living was much more affordable than it is nowadays. So it was quite a good deal, and it was the ultimate thing that needed to be achieved, because back then not many people were going to the States, or Canada wasn't really a big topic back then.
Right.
And New Zealand just had started with Weta. So yeah, most of the people would prefer London. That was the VFX hotspot back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, what year was that?
2007.
Okay, cool.
10 years ago, yeah.
That's awesome.
And
so like, I guess I noticed, by the way, you worked on A Sound of Thunder. Was that with Mark Snoswell and all those guys?
No, we just worked on one sequence with those bugs going rogue, and we did that in a small pop-up office in Cologne for a small company that disappeared after that. It was pretty much like one gig that we did with some former colleagues, and it was quite fun.
Right. Okay.
It was a project that was scattered across some companies in Germany.
Cool. Yeah, because I think the main studio working on that was in Australia, in like Adelaide or something. It's the guy who founded CG Channel, Leonard Teo and Mark Snoswell. And I forget how he landed that project, but yeah, because actually it's because they had like a muscle system that became pretty popular for Macs at the time. And I think that kind of got the attention of the people who needed to get all the dinosaurs done for the movie. So I nearly worked in that film, but I was moving to the States at the time. So I don't know. I've heard mixed things about the project though. So I'm kind of thinking it's probably a good idea.
I think it was a crazy one. There was another company in Stuttgart, Black Mountain, they worked on that.
Black Mountain. Yeah, I know them.
But there was also a big facility in Marina del Rey in LA that worked on it. I had some friends who went over. It was their first gig in the States. They worked together with the visual effects supervisor, the guy who did Total Recall. I can't come up with the name right now.
Right. I know the director. I can't remember who the VFX supervisor.
The VFX soup who won the Oscar for Total Recall. He was VFX souping Sound of Thunder, and they knew him from a former project.
That's pretty awesome. And I guess for you, like, what was the, kind of big break you got? Like, what was the first project that you did that you kind of felt like that kind of really had a big shift in your career?
Well, the thing, in Germany before, we worked on a lot of smaller budgets, and we kind of invented this thing pretty much in line with what Volker Engel is doing, like really coming up and with Hollywood class effects for really cheap money. So everyone had to be a generalist. You really had to invent stuff, and there were a lot of TV shows back then that catastrophe movies, tornadoes that run over Berlin, giant flood waves in the North Sea, all that kind of nonsense. But it was all TV shows, so they had really small budgets, but they still were thriving to do like Roland Emmerich kind of movies. So we always had this really big fight to get those pictures done with a fraction of the money that the big studios had. And that was a really good training for a lot of people in my generation, because we were actually working on those big shots without the big money and without the big technology that the big companies had. And it really was great training to be very inventive and very and to take those challenges. So when I went then to Australia for the first time to work at Animalogic on Australia and what's the other movie? Knowing. Yeah. That was really cool, because I came there like, okay, let's do this, and then I would dive in, and like everyone was like, whoa, what are you doing? Because they were all like, just more to this big studio, slower pace, and like, okay, let's take the step by step, but do it right. And pull out the calculator for everything, and I was just like, yeah, okay, let's put in some fluids here and some particles there, and like still shuffling around a little bit, and that was nice. But I also learned, like, for example, working the first time really with RenderMan and that kind of things, like how the big studio technology started to work. And that was pretty much the thing that went on for the past 5 years. Also being then at Cinesite in London, being at Weta, like I would every 1.5 years when I changed the company, it was a huge step for me, learning new technologies, getting to know new people, new methods, new studio workflows was really cool to see all that stuff and to make a giant step in my experience every 1.5 years or so. That really put me forward.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, I think that everyone should really kind of come from humble beginnings, because I think you get spoiled a little bit when you work at larger studios with larger deadlines and everything's more of, one person works on this a little bit, another person on another little bit. Whereas when you have a $20,000 budget and you have to perform miracles to get things done, you're going to cut corners and think more intelligently about how to do things rather than just like, being more laid back about it. So I think that in the long run, having that kind of background definitely allows you later when you do get those big budgets to be able to utilize it in a whole different way, where you can still do the small scale way of working, but now, maximize it more efficiently when you scale up. So I think that's really cool. And with knowing, for instance, like what kind of work were you doing on that?
I worked on the aliens when they suddenly dissolved. There was a transformation effect, like where particles would peel off, and there were like those flamey things coming out from the aliens. There was fluids that I worked on. So a little bit of look dev and design work, and tons of debris work. There's somewhere in there is a pizza box with my face on it that flows right into the camera.
Did you work with, I think it was Florian Schroeder, the compositor?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember he was comping at Animal on that sequence. I think he didn't have nice stories to tell about it, but he mentioned, I think that he was working on that. That's cool. That's really awesome. And what was your opinion of working in Australia compared to, let's say, Germany?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I really enjoyed my time in Australia because, Sydney is just a brilliant place, which has a lot of benefits, and going out of work there was like really going to vacation rather than just finishing your work day. So the nice weather and the cockatoos really make up for something.
That's cool.
For something. I really enjoyed my time there, but because I already had kids then, and my son was just born, we just spent half a year there and then went back to Germany just for a short period before then going off to London. And Australia is really great. I really liked that we would have football matches during lunch break, Animal Logic versus Rising Sun Pictures in the park. And it's just, Australia is a great place. So I would definitely recommend everyone working there. And also Animal is a great company. I'm still in touch with some people there, and they're doing a great job, even though they shifted their focus a little bit more towards animation now. Yeah. But they still do VFX projects, and they had a cool style back then where they would come up with their own technology because they were already a big studio. So they had a lot of really custom software, like I would imagine a big company like that has, and they're still doing that and doing their own thing. And it's sad to see that even they branch out to Vancouver now, because for me they were always like the big rock in that set in Australia. Is really patriotic about Australia. Like every Australian product is like even peanut butter is Australian owned and produced in Australia and all that. So that was also VFX.
That's right. Was made in Australia with the triangle and the little kangaroo inside of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and for animation and VFX, that was Animal Logic. So I was surprised to see them also go abroad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a natural evolution. Plus, there's a lot of like this. Let's say Fox, for instance, like they pretty much make it that like if you want to work on their films, you got to be in Vancouver, just because that way it's more profitable for them. So I think for a lot of people, it's inevitable. Right now, if you want to work in feature films, then you kind of contractually have to have a studio in Vancouver. So a lot of places are thinking bigger and deciding, hey, well, let's play by the games that our end clients are making us play by, and that is to set up over there. But yeah, I mean, I love Animal and I love RSP. I think both those places are doing really amazing things. And that's cool. So like for you, I guess like moving to London, the first project you did was Prince of Persia. And like, what kind of stuff were you doing that? Like,
I did this. There's a short dream sequence with a pretty rugged lioness that jumps right into the camera with a digital line. So because I had some experience with grooming before, I groomed that lion, and then there's some other additional effects where there was like a poisoning of a king. So I did fluid effects,
cool.
Some smoke stuff and so on. But I didn't work really long on that one, like because my major assignment for Cinecite was Harry Potter, where we spent quite some time developing this effect. It's a really short sequence where they enter a corridor in Harry Potter 7, I believe, and then the ghost of Dumbledore comes up again. So he was supposed to rise from sand or dust on the ground and swirl up, but then build up and then rush towards the camera and vanish again. That sequence is still in the film, and back then stereo was just about to happen. Avatar had just happened. So we produced those shots with billions of particles already in full stereo. And then eventually Warner Brothers decided to not release Harry Potter in stereo. So this was one of the few shots that was already done, because they were still figuring out, can we do conversion? It was the time when Clash of the Titans hit the cinemas, and the experience was, let's say, not consistently well received. So people had doubts about stereo conversion and all that thing. So I think they just didn't want to risk messing up Harry Potter. So they stopped this, and they just did a regular release without the stereo release, and then later did a conversion of the movie when the technology was a bit more developed.
Yep. That's cool. Yeah, I always find it in reverse these days, where you work on a film and then later it comes out like in stereo or in 3D, and it's just like, really? Like, it wasn't 3D when I was working on it, you know what I mean? So, it's definitely doing as a post process later on. I think doing the conversion has definitely become more of the preferred approach for sure. And I guess like for you working on Harry Potter, like, what was the experience like? Did you like find that kind of doing like going through working in now London compared to Australia, compared to Germany? I always kind of like the different environments that I want to always expose myself to. So I always find it enjoyable to go to different places just to kind of see how different they are. And like for you, Cinecite, like what was that like compared to just coming from Animal?
The Cinecite was great. One good friend of mine was the CG supervisor on Potter there, so I really enjoyed hanging around with him. Even the head of production from Cinecite, Courtney, she would yell over the streets of London, "Hey, Team Schnitzel," when she saw the two of us standing around, and we had a really good time because he's like a really good buddy to me, and we developed a lot of stuff for not only for Harry Potter, which was the major thing over my time there, but also we helped on. What's this movie where LA gets ripped apart from aliens? Battle LA, yeah. So we developed a lot of stuff there. So a lot of technology that we developed for Cinecite, like rendering proper fluids with RenderMan, and then the particle shading system, and then eventually bumping up the shaders. So for the last Harry Potter, we could render the staircase. This huge environment, which was exceeding everything that would bypass the current rendering system. So we introduced GI for the first time in RenderMan, still with photon mapping and all that. That's all stuff that I developed together with him and with some of the developers there. So I was jumping from project to project, also a little bit of John Carter, so helping here and there. It was quite nice to work on all those projects and not just doing the same stuff for 1 year, just simulating snowflakes or something. So that also really helped a lot. And it was really cool because we were sitting in a box together with the two lead programmers of Cinecite. So whenever we needed something, they could do it immediately, and they were really good. And then also on the flip side, like whenever someone was running into a problem, we were able to help. It was kind of more being like the SWAT team there rather than just working as an FXDD. Yeah.
I like that. And I guess like one big question I think is, do you think learning to code and having some kind of that technical understanding when it comes to, effects and a lot of other areas as well, but do you think that really kind of gives you that big boost compared to others perhaps in working in film?
Well, I mean, this kind of thing just starts to fly when you are into it. If you're not a technical person, it's not really worth sitting there and trying to look into that stuff that you're not really able to understand. So there's definitely the creative take of things, and you can get really far by that. I don't think there's a lot of animators that really know a lot about math, science, or hopefully physics a little bit. But they run or texture artists. I mean, you don't have to be a super technical guy. And then there's like things like shading or FX2Ds. Yeah, it's beneficial if you have a little bit of knowledge, but that can be anything. It can be, yeah, I know how to script a little bit, or I really know math really good. It can be all kind of things. What I think is really beneficial is to have a good understanding of photography. With, like, the fact that I studied at a Filmakademie, which really deals with making movies, not just a pure animation training, really helped me in a lot of places, knowing about editing and cameras and classic photography. Those things are really beneficial. And it always comes back to you in a lot of things, especially whereas, for example, lighting has become so much more than real world lighting. When I started lighting, you would deal with stupid shadow maps that no one uses anymore. And it was a science on its own, how to sample and how to get it soft, and then how to fake a fall off and all that stuff that you get for free now. So people are so liberated with the tools that come with renderers like Arnold that the lack of knowing about photography is much more apparent. Before, people were lighting something, and then with the advent of HDRs, it seemed like, oh, I don't even have to light anything. I just need to find the right HDR and turn it to the right angle. But now it's become much more necessary for people to actually work more like a photographer than like just a technical guy and know about what they're doing. So the people that are successful nowadays are the ones who know about how to shoot a real movie and what techniques to use there and how to approach it. Because they can make pictures look good. It's still the same craft in a way.
No, that's great. That's really great advice too. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, especially before 3D was more about just trying to mimic reality, whereas now we're at a point where all the tools are literally doing what happens in reality. So you're right. Like, instead of doing some gimmicky 3-point lighting setup or let's say a sky dome before you could do GI, bit by bit, it's gone to a point where now using physical cameras, you're going to work in stops rather than working in just bring up a multiplier or whatever it's going to be. And so I think bit by bit, you need to have an understanding of how a camera works, how a camera sensor works, how light works, and getting a good understanding of character lighting and doing what a DOP does every day of their life on set. So I think it's really critical to mimic what you would do in reality, since if you are doing that in 3D, then you should know what you would be doing if you were physically there shooting that exact scene. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I guess for you, like, let's talk Weta. Like, how did that come up? Was it the 10th anniversary of your parents knocking on the door? Or?
No, not really. It was more like we decided to leave London because my son was there, and we just decided, okay, we have enough now. We've spent some time there, and we still like London, but it's still a very busy, demanding place. And so we said, yeah, on the long run, we don't really want to stay here with the kids. Because it's hard to afford and it's quite a challenge to live there, and it's always loud and noisy and all that. So, but we thought, hey, we're not ready to go back to Germany, and everything's packed, so it won't come easier than now. So I just applied there, and luckily enough, they offered me a job. Because my interview was led by a guy, Christoph Sprenger. He was longtime head of FX at Weta.
Yeah,
I knew him. I worked together with him at Animalogic before. So suddenly I had him on the line, and he said, yeah, okay, come over. And it was a really cool time there because Weta, like you hear all those stories before, like how great the place, but also how demanding, like especially in time
you're going to work.
Hours. But I found that's not really true. It might be that I just got lucky, but I also met a lot of people that really stressed out. Yeah, it's not you. It's still your own decision if you want to make it. And I also found, actually a lot of people that do the overtime, they're either greedy or bored. So for me it was a really great experience. I think I had one crunch time week where I worked a little bit more. The rest of the time I was just working my regular hours, and that's it. So I never ran into this massive overtime thing. And I had a really good time there because I started working on, I think I prepped a little bit for Tintin and also for Planet of the Apes, but eventually I landed on X-Men First Class. Mm-hmm. And I got to work on those because I just came from Cinecide and had worked with particles and renderman shaders and all that. And at that time, Weta was still big-time renderman user. So I started looking into how to render particles for water simulations, which they just had used the first time. They had used Naiad on Avatar the first time, but it was still not very far developed because Naiad was still this beta, not even a one release thing that they were using. So a lot of custom things that they had built around were needed to actually render some pictures. And then Weta had this challenging sequence with a lot of battleships in front of Cuba hanging around, and then eventually Magneto lifting the submarine out of the sea. So that shot landed on my plate.
That's cool.
And that was really cool back then. Yeah, I mean, there is still, I mean, looking back, I mean, yeah, that shot doesn't look super crazy, but for that time it was okay-ish, even though companies like Scanline with their technology were still light years ahead, but still it was okay. And so I started developing with one of the shader writers, and we started developing this whole particle rendering thing. So I also, again, was learning a lot, but also like putting a lot in that I was thinking which was needed, because I always could balance the like technical needs with creative needs quite well, which was beneficial for me because I could run a shot, but at the same time could look into the development of a shader, not just one of the two. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on that shot, also using their in-house particle hydrodynamics tool, Synapse, which is really cool, and which I think they eventually then used on all the Hobbit movies for the river and all that stuff. So that system is nowadays so advanced that it can really do kick-ass water simulations no matter what. That was a really great experience there, and I was really sad to leave. But by then my second child was on the way, so I had to make a decision, make him a Kiwi or not. So we decided to eventually then go back to Germany and ended up in Berlin, where I was already hired as a CG supervisor at Mondo. But because the guy they hired as a VFX supervisor dropped out, I was, before I even started, promoted to be a VFX supervisor. So I came to that role and landed back in Berlin and then started working as a VFX supervisor straight away.
That's cool. And I guess for you, like, was that where you started doing more on-set supervision?
No, Mondo was back then. It was a huge undertaking with lots of different studios. The main hub was still Los Angeles, so the show supervisor, the guy who was running the whole show, was there, and then they would start distributing work to their other offices. So to Stuttgart, Frankfurt. Back then they had so many studios. They had like 5 in Germany and London, and it was crazy, and it was growing way too fast. So it was not very controllable. But the unit in Berlin had been around for some time, and they were pretty good at FX stuff. So we had to do this sequence for Journey to the Mysterious Island, where this underwater sub is going through those channels of the sinking island with lava underwater everywhere. So it was just berserk. It's not really the first thing that you want to do, even though I was used to effects. But then I couldn't do anything because I was not used to working with 3D Studio Max and Fume and Krakatoa and all those tools that they had. Luckily enough, they had really a ton of skilled people. But it was crazy. I think it was 40 shots or something, and every shot was full stereo with cracking rocks in a really big environment, volumes, fume simulations everywhere. Every lava crack had to bubble, and it was just insane. And so that was my first job. And yeah, when that was done, I was like, okay, I somehow survived this, but we need to change it. And I don't want to do this like this. But it got, it always gets worse before it gets better, because then we worked on Game of Thrones season 2, and that was really harsh because we did this green sea battle explosion.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa, and that was intense. That was just intense because it was too late by then that we could raise the hand and say, hey, we're not making this because everything is scheduled for Game of Thrones, yourself.
Yeah.
And they're very demanding. So they halfway through production, they came up with even more shots that we were supposed to do for the sequence that we weren't told about. And then it got really, really bad on our way. And it was quite a struggle to finish this. And
it looked amazing. But yeah, I imagine it'd be such a massive undertaking.
Yeah, it was an orange explosion until 2 weeks before delivery or so.
Trust me, I could tell you stories of the night before delivery.
Yeah,
completely changing the edit, but yeah.
The classic thing, yeah. By the way, we haven't had yet. So that, but still, it's all experiences that you make, and also, it makes you stronger for the next one, even though sometimes it's really hard. And so we finished that, and then the company still had good trust in me, and so we got our hands on Star Trek, which was amazing because the first Star Trek movie was completely done by LM, but somehow Mondo managed to get their hands on half of the award for the effects. So here we go.
No, it's cool. So, I remember I was hanging out with the LA Mondo crew when they were actually, that's right, I was talking with them about jumping on the project. I just wrapped my portion of the film at my office just down the street from there. But yeah, it was really impressive seeing like all the stuff that globally Mondo was doing at all the different offices for that film. It looked pretty amazing. And which sequence were you guys on?
I did the whole attack on the headquarter at the beginning of the movie when the ship attacks the headquarter and shooting into the building, and then all the shots drop out, and then eventually Kirk throws the fire hose into the engine of the spaceship, which then crashes into the building and drops down. So quite a massive sequence, also including several full stereo IMAX shots and all that. That was also a massive undertaking because each of those shots was just really, really big, and still pretty much we were working out of the box, which was not like that we had like the arsenal of tools that Animal or Weta or even Cinesite would have. It's pretty much out of the box. And but it was great stuff. I had a really great crew, and we spent 9 months on that sequence or so, and it just turned out really well, and everyone till the day is really, really proud on this. And there's like a hidden gimmick in there. I think you can still find it if you have the Blu-ray or something. Okay. There's one frame where basically this fire hose that Kirk throws into the ship. It's on a wheel, and that wheel was towards the end of the project, and that wheel wasn't just textured. Say, hey, put some texture on them. My artist says, what texture? I don't know. So you put like, I think the canal, how do you call it? Canal cover from Venice or something on there. Oh, okay. Like, no, use an Oreo cake. So he actually textured an Oreo cake on there, and you can still see it. And at that time, we were using 2D motion blur on the show. So when I saw the render and all the renders, I don't know why, but they all took really, really long. So there was no real chance to re-render this. And I saw the render without the motion blur. I was like, oh my God. Because it could really, you could see it like for 5 frames, and it's like really, it's really big in the frame. And so eventually we applied the motion blur, we comped the shot, and we got it approved. No one noticed, but you can still, there's this one frame, if you hold on that frame, you can very, very clearly see it, and it's really big in the frame.
I love it. We had that on Flight, the Denzel movie, working on that, and like the last week before the movie came out, I guess Robert Zemeckis was like saying, "Hey, there's the big shot where it's in the trailer where the plane's upside down," and the director's like, "Hey, we need a pilot sitting in the chair because you can't see Denzel or anyone up there." So it's like 3 a.m, and an email goes around, and Wei, who was the senior compositor at the time, he's like, we needed someone to fly the plane. Actually, sorry, it was one of the lighting guys. He's like, we need someone to fly the plane. So he threw me in as the he Googled me and just found like a random image, put me as the pilot instead of Denzel, and Wei, the senior compositor, is the co-pilot. So suddenly it was like, great, our movie debut, we're going to be flying the plane in the movie trailer. So I had no idea about it. And so I love those little gimmicks though, where you can kind of sneak something in, because it's that way. It's like your little imprint, I guess, into a project.
If you get it done, then it's great. And then after a movie's released, and if you tell anyone, then you're a hero. But you're risking a lot. I have seen also this going horribly wrong. Like your supervisor approved a shot where you put something in, and then the clients notice, and whoa.
Oh man, I haven't seen that yet. But because I did like Krypton, like Superman Returns, the first shot in the movie, Krypton blows up. I put a little 3ds Max teapot as one of the bits of debris. But at the same time, I never really think of the repercussions if the client ever, catches you.
Yeah.
So yeah, jumping ahead though, like for you, like doing more Onset supervision stuff, like how did that come to be? And I'm kind of curious, like when you are doing any Onset stuff like that, what the transition for that's kind of been like.
Yeah, because of the ways Pixelmondo was structured, a lot of the big movies, they were acquired in the US and then run out of their LA office and then redistributed to us. So we barely never got in touch. But at the same time, we also started putting our hands up because being in Berlin is the movie capital of Germany, even though the whole VFX industry is scattered around different cities in Germany.
Film studio.
Yeah, but in Babelsberg, there's a lot of stuff, and also pretty much a lot of the movies that are shot, they're shot in Berlin, or the production companies are in Berlin. So we started getting our first contacts to the local industry, but after Star Trek, pretty much Pixelmondo shut down a lot of studios, including our Berlin studio, which was really sad because I was just attending FMX in Stuttgart the day before. We had just been assigned with new shots for another project, and then I would read in the newspaper that the boss of Pixel had said that Berlin is shut, and I was like, "What? I'm reading it in the newspaper? That's bizarre." And but it was true. And the next day, everyone was laid off, and so Pixelmondo was over because they just from one day to the other, all those jobs that they had the year before, none of them happened again. They shut down a lot of studios. So luckily, a lot of the artists that I worked with, a lot of them managed to stay in Berlin, and I'm still working with them today and throughout the years. Also, some people.
Sorry to cut you off. I'm trying to remember the South African guy who was always working in the Berlin.
Peter Menz, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to look up his name on Skype now. I'm like, I couldn't remember his name. Yeah, all those guys are really great. Like such talented.
Yeah, he's still around here. He works like down the road, like 2 blocks from me. Cool. Yeah. It's quite funny, like because all the Trix is now back two houses away from where Pixelmondo was, so it's all still on the same street, and everyone's seeing everyone in the lunch break, and yeah, it's cool. After that, I was thinking about founding my own company. I did that for one project, but then we got an offer from this company Chimney from Sweden, who had a little commercial boutique shop in Berlin, and they wanted to. They just had done their first big feature project. It was the
Terry Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam, that's him. Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam was he was doing this movie that they worked on, which was their first experience to work on a feature movie, but they were feeling that working out of Sweden was not working for them for feature movies. They would need a bigger VFX scene around to recruit artists and also to acquire funding. Funding is more present in Germany than it is in Sweden. At the same time, that company had an office in the Ukraine, which became more and more unstable, so they had to let go of that. So they were pretty much starting to get into the German market. Whoever we talked to, no one was really up for really expanding. They were all a bit frightened by the case of Pixelmondo, and everyone was convinced that a VFX shop that grows really fast is doomed already, which is not completely true. But yeah, a certain respect for growth is definitely not wrong.
I think so. Pixel, and we don't need to kind of focus on too much, but I think Pixelmondo, it was more definitely like anywhere that there seemed to be any tax incentive or any opportunity is kind of like, let's just plant ourselves there. And I think Thilo in the beginning had a really good idea of, having that aggressive expansion being everywhere meant that you can get work. But after a while, you're dealing with the overhead of like all these studios and having to keep every single one of them afloat. And after a while, your overhead and the cost of expanding so quickly, it ends up being a pretty big monster to kind of maintain after you've established it all. So, I don't know. I think it started out as a good idea and it just kind of dwindled.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 types of companies. And there's those companies that are run by a big corporation and they just are interested in your numbers. Are you making profit or not? Mm-hmm. And then that might probably be the case if you work for something in the Technicolor universe or something. And then there's owner-driven companies like Pixelmondo is, like Trickster is, like a lot of Chimney is, like other companies are, where there's a visionary behind. But those are mostly good salesmen. They're not so, like, I don't know many companies where the owners are are super deep into like supervising their own stuff and so on. For example, Logic is a good example because their head is really he knows his art.
Yep.
He knows what he's selling. Yeah, exactly. He knows what he's selling, so he knows exactly what he's doing. So he's got a super good idea about what his business is about. But whereas in other companies, sometimes people have made big success with a company like Thilo is a perfect example. He's an architect. He's come a long way, and he's reinventing himself all the time. But I think he could also, I don't know, sell pizzas or something. It's not so much that you feel like he knows his product really well. And a lot of companies have that problem that they are trying to run a business and you get focused on the business and on the numbers and everything that comes with it, but you're not really you don't look properly after your product. Mm-hmm. So that's making a big difference in the company. So it was the same thing with Chimney. It was all about like, how much money are they making and all that. But it's sometimes difficult to keep the focus on, but we still want to produce something. We need good artists. We need to treat our artists well and do all this stuff. We need to build a good pipeline. We have to have a good work environment because all those things is what make a VFX studio thriving. So there's still stuff that you can see that happens over and over again because people are not getting more and more clever about it or taking a different approach.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. And like going back to what you're saying before about on-set, like, for you, what was the transition like to doing more on-set work?
That was great. I mean, the first times it's been smaller projects here in Germany where we could go on set. Also being in Berlin, you would just like drive out to the Babelsberg. It's a 45-minute car drive, and then there would be something, and just see how it all works. And then down the road, it would end up with those really big projects like Atomic Blonde, and it's like spending 30 shooting days in Budapest, and I don't know, and teaching studies around German and all that comes with it. So that has been quite a thing that developed over the years at Chimney. Where I got more and more in touch with directors and directly with the production, become a part of the production, not having someone in between whose only job is to talk to a director that I could talk to myself. And I really enjoy those projects most where I have the direct touch. Now, if I had the choice between a project that has like the bigger budget, the bigger effects or whatever, and a project where I would have the direct access to the production, I would always favor that because that is what makes it enjoyable. If you can really, and that's really what makes you feel like, you're part of the creative process. If you can talk directly to the creatives, not just talk to someone who then will go and sell your great ideas to someone. That has been really game changer for me. I'm not a supervisor for a crazy long time, but that has really changed my job again, because I was not just the one delivering to some other supervisor, but actually talking to a director, checking out, does this and this work in the edit, like being part of the whole process, not just like polishing pixels on a certain frame.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's a good point too about like, do you think it's vital to build relationships with the directors? Let's say like, I guess like Volker Engel would be a great example of, him and Roland, how, they've got that collaboration, have had that collaboration forever. But, for you as a VFX soup, do you think it's really critical to build relationships with as many directors that you can? So that way, over time, obviously, you have that trust factor where they want you on their project because you're essentially being able to babysit the movie and make sure that like a big portion of the film is safe from a lot of the chaos that could happen with the wrong people.
I mean, ultimately, it's the biggest thing that can happen. If a director says, I want blah blah blah, I want Michael for my movie to look after visual effects, that's the best thing that can happen. But then again, it's not so likely that this is going to happen every time, because there's a lot of other considerations, like you mentioned earlier, tax credits. Then the next thing is, who does the producer know? So there's other people who know other people as well. It's not the only thing that favors us, and it's not that every director picks their own crew. That's all on set. And also, if you have more more independent directors, for example, we worked on a independent movie called The White King. Director is German-Polish, I believe, and he co-directed with his wife, who is English-American, and then they're based in England, shot a movie in Hungary. Was
the whole
really
world covered.
Yeah, was a really great, and they edited in Berlin, and I was doing the effects in Berlin, and then the grading was done in Stockholm. So it was a true European collaboration. This thing was great, but it took them, I don't know, 3 or 4 years to get the movie done. So I can't. It's not probably very likely that I'll see them again soon, even though I would like to, because not all the directors, especially in the independent market, they can make a movie every year or two movies a year or something crazy like that. So it's great to work with them, but it's not the cornerstone of my business and my relations.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately.
And I guess like one of my final questions, but if you want to talk about Atomic Blonde, what were the contributions that you guys had for that?
Atomic Blonde was we were early on board with this because Chimney had a deal to do all VFX and post-production for the movie. So that meant that I flew to Budapest in September 2015, the first time, where everything was during pre-production. Met the team, and they were explaining me what they're up to do. And then we started planning the movies. They had already quite a good idea about what they were doing, but they didn't have their own visual effects supervisor. So I was like surprised because like it's not like a major blockbuster, but still it's an American production with everything and all the bells and whistles. So and a big Hollywood star and all that. So they didn't have a visual effects supervisor. So they said, okay, you do that on your own. Okay. So I had to, luckily enough, from Berlin to Budapest, it's just a 1-hour flight, so I could just fly in and out all the time. Didn't have to spend the whole winter in Budapest, which would have been hard. So in October we started shooting, and whenever there was like a bigger visual effects thing going on, I would go to set and supervise on set and talk to the director and the DOP and blah, blah, blah. And that was a super great experience, and it also was a big lesson on like how to get that stuff done, because they are not waiting for you to get your stuff done, and on set is quite a if you need something, then you really have to make yourself noticeable to get your stuff. And it was a quite amazing thing to see that when that it was not about being not loud enough. It was just about to say I need this and this, and then they would have done it. If I would tell the script continuity girl, hey, I need the director's shoe size every day, she would have just written it down. It was just a request. She's doing the job. Bam, it's there. No one is really questioning stuff. The only thing that doesn't happen is that there's no. There's always just yes. I like that. It's just moving forward.
That's cool.
And that gets it done. And it was cool. I mean, yeah, obviously with all the background of the story, it was really funny to see all those German things, German history taking place there. But from this very obvious comic and action movie take perspective of view.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of the big challenges on that project?
Well, the biggest challenge was, there was two big challenges. The one was this big Alexanderplatz shot, which was full CG because they intended to do a drone shoot in Berlin, but that's not possible because you don't get flight permissions in Berlin to shoot nearby the TV tower or near the Reichstag. Right. So early on, we decided, okay, we'll make this a full digital shot and then take the advantage of it and make it that piece of history. So the 5 days before the wall comes down, 500,000 people on the Alexanderplatz, all the iconic buildings still in the state of 1989, which is not, even if we had shot it, we would have had to alter half of the shot because all the buildings look completely different now, renovated and all that.
That's right.
So we really made this big period piece out of it. And because our office was just like a 5-minute walk away from Alexanderplatz, we could go and we really photographed everything. We went on the TV tower and took photos from there and from the park inn and from everywhere. So all the angles, everything is correct. It's really like more like a true history piece, even though this movie is absolutely not about being historically correct. But that shot everything is correct. Even where the guys are standing there talking to the masses, everything is there. The East German cars, everything is correct.
That's cool.
And we really outdid us on that shot. I think it cost the double what it should have, but everyone agreed, yeah, that's the one where we want to take it for. Yeah, that's where we move all the money, and everyone liked it. And then obviously the second big challenge on the movie was the stitching sequence, this 9-minute monster that with this staircase fight. That was intense, and that was quite a long process because that was one of the earliest things that they told us about that they would need help with, besides all the other stuff that happened. So we started with a breakdown that was written by the director, and then taking it from there. We did some very simple 3D CG previews that we did. Back then, everything was shorter because it was just a car chase ending in the water. And then eventually they came up with the idea, okay, well, no, it's going to be different. And then they came up with the idea of doing that. So they did a stunt. Their stunt team was really amazing. Also, the director who used to be a stuntman, he had a lot of experience with shooting that kind of stuff. So early on, they decided one of the stunt guys will be the camera operator, not the camera operator will shoot this because it's so demanding physically that they need someone who can dance around with a small camera in the staircase. So they rented the staircase really weeks ahead, and then they prepared everything with the soft stairs and soft walls and all that they would need to get going, and trained a lot there. And then they would shoot a stunt preview. So pretty much the whole sequence was laid out by the stunt guys playing on location with stunt doubles. Edited together so we would know roughly where the stitches between the single instances are. And then we started shooting it, and during the shoot, their editor Elizabeth, she had her laptop there, and she and I would check together if the stitches would work. So we had like a live playback, and she would cut it together. And at the end, she was a fairly good compositor because I told her, okay, now let's rotate this little piece here, and yeah, we can do that. And so we were joking around this thing called the Texas stitch or Texas switch, which is like a classic way of how to get an invisible cut done. So we invented the Budapest stitch, which was pretty much just like let's rotate that leg so we can take it over and have it wipe over the screen. But there's a lot of transitions that are really just a hard cut and still worked because it's also a lot of camera shaking and all that, so you can tell. But there's also very sophisticated stitches, like over her body when she loads the gun. That was a nightmare to do because like we had to warp and match every fold and then cut out the gun and so there's also some stitches that are right in your face and you don't see them. And then once we got out of that building and that business was done, the car chase started, and that was even crazier because they had built this crazy rig, which was the same camera rig that they used on Children of Men, but it was not. I was always thinking it would be remote controlled or something and had programmed camera moves. No, it was actually operated by guys sitting in the trunk, and everyone was in the trunk. There were like 7 people on that car rig driving around. That thing could still drive, 40, 50 kilometers per hour through the streets of Budapest.
Wow.
And then could on top mount green screens on it, so that if you couldn't make it or for the scenes with the car crash, because they just could film the car crash, they just did one take on it, then they would use green screens and we would comp it in. So that it was just bizarre to see this thing with like, there was a police car in the middle and there was another layer of people and rig around it, and then something on top and the camera in there. It's as big as a tank, but in the movie it just looks like it's this tiny police car, but actually there's this 9 meter long, 4 meter wide thing driving through the streets, but you don't get to see it in the movie. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I guess is what we love about this kind of work is the fact that you have no idea how much work goes into some of these crazy shots that we'll do. But that's so cool to kind of get that insight into, especially on set, just the craziness of it all. And that's really cool. Like, so how do you, in the end, like, how do you think the movie was received in terms of the work you guys are doing and just the movie as a whole? Like, how was the movie, I guess, received? Because I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. I've been meaning to, but again, deadline.
It's cool. It's a cool popcorn movie, and they loved it. I think it did quite well at the box office. So they're happy with it. I think they're even talking about doing a prequel. It's been a great experience. I really like the loose style, how they dealt with all those things. There's like skateboarders and punks and beer drinking people everywhere. It's like a non-historic take on Berlin. If a German would have made the same movie, it would have been so boring because they would all be about being accurate and no, it wasn't like that. It was more like that and all that stuff. And they are just like, I don't care. Make it neon, make it colorful. Let's play with it. Let's just use it as a backdrop to our action story. And so that was really nice to see. Because it's still there, all the details, because the prop master and also the production designer, they're all Germans. They knew everything, and they really dug out everything that they could, all the police cars and the German telephone booth and everything. They got it all. So it was really, really funny to see all that come together. And it was great to be part of that process, because I could really firsthand witness, because being in touch with the editor and the director for all the post-production, it was really great to see how they were really able to improve the movie throughout. Like from the first version, they kept working for months on it, and every version that they would turn around became better and better. It was not this hard experience where people don't know what they want and then you're running in circles. This was really productive and going forward, so just constantly improving and real involvement, and that was really inspiring to see. Something that I would have, something I would have definitely missed out on if I wouldn't have been in touch with them directly.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And yeah, you're right. Like I love those experiences where it's so rare too, where you can say, yeah, we had this much time on a project and we literally every step of the way just kept making things better, instead of like, here are the 5 different directions we went, or, we just ended up like plateauing and kind of having a period where nothing really changed that much. Like when you really kind of hit the ground running and give it everything you got. Like I love those experiences. And yeah, I guess like, I'll wrap things up here, but is there any, like if people wanted to find out more about you, is there a website or anywhere, social media they can go to reach out to you?
I don't have much of a presence. I don't have an agent and all that. So there is a cool breakdown about Atomic Blonde on Chimney's webpage. I think it's pretty easy to find. Other than that, I'm not sure. No, that's probably the kind of famous that I still need to get to.
No worries. Cool, man. Again, thank you so much for taking time to do this. This has been fun.
Great, no worries.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, thank you to Michael Wortmann for taking time out to chat. I'm going to be back next week with Chris Doe, who is the founder and owner, as well as the creative director of Blind, one of the leading design studios in the world, who they do some really phenomenal stuff. Chris Doe had a lot of candor. He was an open book, and I was able to ask him anything, which I think is so great for someone who is so impactful with his branding, with his name, as well as what they do as a company. He's definitely a very powerful identity inside of design, and to have total access and to be able to dive into a lot of really deep subjects and get a lot from it. I loved this episode. It was just really amazing to get to chat to Chris and just share a lot of the insights and just what he's able to accomplish in the many years inside of the industry. And shortly after that, excluding the boot camps and things like that are coming up, I'm going to be interviewing Bobby Chu from Schoolism, Willie Sussman, who is the leading immigration lawyer for New Zealand, who handles all of Weta's stuff, works directly with Peter Jackson. He shares a lot of insights on how to work, live, migrate, all that stuff, like pretty much a step-by-step recipe on working and living in New Zealand, as well as up-to-date events, even in 2018. So it's really interesting. I love that we kind of talked really closely, even after the episode, on making sure that everything to the minute was up to date, because New Zealand is going through a lot of shifts at the moment. And so we want to make sure that everything that has changed in between recording the episode and the episode going out is completely up to date. And so there's definitely been a lot of additional information and just a lot of great stuff in there. So that's really cool. Again, it was just really phenomenal just to get to chat to him about everything. And followed by that, Jason Martin, who is the creative director for Doom. He's going to be on the podcast. We're going to be talking about a lot of really cool stuff. Beyond that, there's the VFX Supervisor from Marvel as well, which is going to be awesome. There's a lot of really awesome episodes. And like I said, the boot camp's coming back. There's so much work. They're literally a course, and I love it. It's so much work though. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to make it all happen, but we will be doing that. I want to try and get that consistently throughout the year, hit 12 subjects, make them fully immersive, put books and video tutorials and video talks and everything else around them. So this is going to be a lot of fun as well as a lot of work, but it's going to be happening as well. So those are going to be resuming pretty soon and hopefully stay consistent. So when I do execute on that, it will be intentionally knowing that we can keep them all going. So it's probably looking at March at this point, but when we do execute, it'll be March, April, May, all the way through. So it's going to be really cool. All right, so I will leave it there. Check out the show notes, alanmckay.com/124 to check out the episode with Michael Wortmann, all the information, quotes, a lot of the really key insights, everything, links to everything we talked about, and more. All right, so I will leave it there. I'll be back next week with episode 125 with Chris Doe. Rock on.